Let us see what the Football Manager gods have for us today. Oh, I'm sensing many myths abound. Oh, this is a strong presence. If only we could find someone who might be able to dispel these. I implore you, Magic Smoothie Cup. Do this thing!
I can do that. And we have a list of 10 myths to debunk today, starting with training a player at a new position costs current ability. And I have some awful news. It does. But I have some good news. It doesn't as much as you'd think. So I've started this save for test purposes with the Brisbane Roar. We're gonna go to this 19-year-old Eli Adams. This guy plays left wing, he plays right wing. He's not very good, but he's still better than me. You'll notice that the recommended current ability is 81. That's what their current ability should be at. We're in the editing phase here, so that is going to change. If we had right wing back, which is a position that he is close to and should be used to doing, that real recommended current ability has gone up 8. And what I found while testing this is that adding less familiar positions will actually make the player eat up more of their current ability. So if you have somebody that plays as an attacking winger, you want to turn them into a fullback, that's going to eat up more of their current ability. And why is that important? Why is this a big myth in the first place? Because you can only reach your potential ability. Now, very few players go all the way to their potential ability, so are you really eating up that much of a player's development? Probably not. But if you train all the way to completely used to a position, it does eat up a certain amount of current ability, and that will take away just that little bit extra amount of development, which makes complete sense. So the myth's not busted. It's confirmed. And the second myth I've heard people bring up actually goes along with this. What about the footedness of players? Does training the footedness of players really significantly eat up current ability? And as you might guess, it does. Let's put our player back the way he was before, not playing any extra positions. And now we're going to take the right foot and go from 10 to 20. That means we've just added 13 current ability. Now, this has a couple of different meanings. One, if you are training a player to develop their weaker foot, you can usually only get it to reasonable, which is 10 out of 20. But if they're starting it very weak, you are going to eat up a significant amount of that player's current ability. So if they are a winger that really doesn't need to use their other foot that much, or a goalkeeper or something like that, it's probably not worth actually training it on them. Two, this also means if you're scouting a player and it says they're very good and your scout likes them more, they're actually going to have slightly worse attributes if they're also either footed. Also, them being either footed, depending on the position, like striker or central midfielder, can be incredibly valuable. So it's a worthy trade-off. It's just worth noting that two players that are rated exactly the same by your scout, where one is completely dual-footed and one is singularly mono-footed. The mono-footed player, there's no way that's a thing. The guy that can... Lamella. The Lamella does have a more skill than the player that can use both their feet. The player that can use both their feet can use both their feet. So that's just something to keep in mind now. Myth confirmed. The third myth, hitting the subscribe button is not worth it. That myth is absolutely busted. Hitting the subscribe button quite literally changes lives and allows us to make super cool videos, like the fact that we're going to Greenland in a couple of months to film the Greenland Football Championships and bring that experience to you. That's only because you guys subscribe, and I really appreciate it. The actual number 3 is, does the AI learn your tactic? Yes and no. We're gonna bust this myth. The AI doesn't necessarily react to your tactic. If you've noticed, every manager in the game has a preferred formation and a second preferred formation. Basically, every staff member in the game has that, and so that is what they will generally lean on. What AI managers do react to is what other teams have done that happens to have worked well, if that makes sense. Because of the analytics stuff in the game, the AI will actually react to what has performed well against you, and this comes from mainly the fact that the AI is going to react to how good they think you are. This is actually something that's important to remember for one of the later myths. I just thought I'd let you know. The computer, as you might have noticed, as your team gets better, will pack it in more. Like this season, playing against Salzburg with my Floridsdorfer team in Austria, now that we are currently going unbeaten in the Austrian league, you can check that out on the link to Twitch down in the description. They're playing a 4-5-1. If we go back a couple of seasons and check out what they're playing against us in the league, they're playing a 4-2-3-1. They have adapted to be more defensive because they are now scared of us. It's not each manager making specific tweaks to try and counter your tactic that eventually makes your system redundant. It's them reacting to how good they think you are and using analysis from previous matches to see what has actually has worked. There's a difference there, and I feel like you're understanding it, so we're gonna go. But the AI does not specifically react to what your tactics are on that day. Right. The fourth myth, that there is a luck modifier. Now, the theory behind the luck modifier is that every time you log into the game, your luck is different. What I feel like I've disproven conclusively here is that exists because of the way the network game went, where I play with Dr. Benji, Lelujo, and Work the Space. We usually play like once a week. But we last played a month ago because everybody was traveling, and I drew like 4 really frustrating matches in a row. I get off, I get back on, and we have really frustrating draw in the next match after we get back on. Obviously, that is a case study. That is not like statistically significant, but I can tell you the luck modifier doesn't exist. There is no luck modifier. There's always going to be somebody that thinks there's a luck modifier. That's just the way this works. Now, there is something that can determine how your team does day to day, though, that can feel like a luck modifier. And this is the fact that your players' consistency is essentially a role going into every match. The same as in real life, your players have good days and bad days, and depending on their hidden attributes, they can kind of turn those around, and leadership and those sorts of things in your squad. But if a player goes in and starts playing poorly on a particular day, and you love that player and you know they're good, they're just having a bad day, and you did get unlucky. That's the real luck modifier in the game. Busted. Number 5, the fifth myth. Football Manager is scripted. Football Manager is not scripted, but certain things might look stupid in the match engine, but were actually meant to happen. This is because I have hung out with lovely Nick Madden before. He's the guy that actually makes the match engine in Football Manager, and I have befriended over the years of doing this so that he can explain things to me, like the fact that the match engine is a representation of what the game is deciding should happen. So even if the match engine messes up and something looks really stupid, that is what the numbers in the game said should happen. The match engine just did not do a good job of representing it. So if you feel like that ball was just destined to go in and everybody got out of the way, the ball was supposed to go in based off the numbers behind the match engine. The match engine just didn't make it look very good. So essentially, you didn't get screwed as bad as you think you did. Just this black box full of numbers said you were supposed to lose. It's not scripted, though. It's not predetermined what's going to happen at the beginning of a match. You can re-simulate a match in Football Manager 1,000 different times, get 1,000 different results, and that's just the way the game works because it's luck-based at a certain point. Number 6, the mid-season slump. I get asked about this so often. Does it happen to you? How do you deal with the mid-season slump? And I've got one answer for you. This myth is true. And I have to thank Fuller FM, somebody who writes a blog, and they actually wrote this blog like 2 years ago. But while I was researching this topic in particular, that blog came up and made me think about it in a completely new way. The link to that blog is down in the description, so feel free to check it out. But thank you to Fuller FM because the mid-season slump is real because of what we talked about earlier. The AI reacts how good it thinks you are. Well, at the beginning of a season, when you get your season preview and it says you're going to be a relegation candidate and that your team is going to stink, but you know, because you've been watching a lot of these videos, that your team's actually going to be a lot better than that. Well, in the first part of the season, the AI thinks you're bad. So they're going to try and go and blow you out tactically, and then you're going to blow them away because there's a lot more space. Depending on what your tactic is in particular, you could be absolutely exploiting the fact that the AI thinks you are bad. But then, as you go through the course of the season, the AI realizes that season preview, that your reputation and size of club is changing. The quality of player that you have and how seriously they should take you is changing. So they will react to that in the way we saw Salzburg do earlier. You go from that 4-2-3-1 to a 4-5-1, get a little more responsible. Even just a slight change in mentality from attacking to positive can completely throw off the spaces that you've been exploiting as a team. And you're not going to get them to switch it back to attacking because they're not stupid. They don't want to lose to you anymore. And so they tick it back down to positive, then maybe even tick it all the way to balanced, and you don't have that space to move, causing your mid-season slump. If you are dramatically overachieving, you will run into a mid-season slump fairly often, and you need to adjust your tactic accordingly because your opponent is not playing as offensively as they used to. I know. Myth number 7. England in all of its glory is overrated on Football Manager. This is true. And I've got 2 facts to back this up for you. One, we've done not 1, but 2 different simulations, the 2022 World Cup in 2 different games. England won them both. England's only won 1 World Cup in history, and history is not on the side of Football Manager thinking that England should win the 2022 World Cup both times. Of course, if they do, then I'll look like a fool, but also if they do, the world's just gonna end. So And the other fact, and perhaps much more prevalent to the fact that England just seems to dominate in Football Manager, is the fact that in the last 13 Champions Leagues, England has won 2. Chelsea has won both of those, just for the record. United won 14 years ago, so obviously I made the number look as impressive as possible, just so we have all that out of the way. Now, I really encourage you to look in your save. And I have not had a save where England didn't win more than 50% of the freaking Champions Leagues over the course of my save. And that's what we have here. Only PSG and Bayern have won the Champions League, and there's been, I don't want to count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's been 8 Champions Leagues, and only 2 of them have been won by non-English teams. Your save will likely have a very similar look, and it has been this way for years. I mean, statistically, England is overrated on Football Manager. Statistically speaking, science. It's not statistically significant, but it's scientific enough for the internet. Number 8, if you have more shots, you should be winning. Now, this is something that the invention of XG has only enforced, but this myth is busted. In Football Manager 2022 in particular, I have won a streamer showdown title, and I won this playing against Work the Space, this lovely individual right here. I won it playing against Work the Space, and he absolutely outshot me. Completely outshot me, but we won anyways. Why? We created the better opportunities. We created the 1v1s, the notorious 1v1s that you probably always miss, and so do I, and we can cry together later. But my 1v1s went in enough while I encouraged him to cross the ball for deep headers and not give up as many clear-cut opportunities. I will say the clear-cut system in FM22 seems broken. It doesn't seem like it counts the right number of clear-cut chances in the game ever since XG was introduced. But if your XG on a shot is below 0.1 per shot, your defense is doing okay. And even if you get outshot 3-1, but you create that 1.3, 0.4 chance on the counter where you catch them with the right numbers, and you absolutely deserve to win the game. And you can set up tactics, particularly direct defensive tactics, that are designed to create those 2 or 3 chances for you and give up a lot of low quality chances against you. So you can get outshot and out XG'd and absolutely deserve to win, as much as that would annoy me. Number 9, injuries lower potential ability. We know they lower current ability a little bit, depending on the severity of the injury, particularly on the physical side of things. But after a thorough investigation deep in the forums of SI, I have found the answer. An official moderator for the SI forums has said after a very serious, possibly career-ending injury, both CA and PA can drop. It is rare though. So this myth is mostly busted. Yeah, it's mostly busted because most injuries are not going to lower potential ability. If somebody blows out both their knees at the same time, breaks a leg, breaks their back, one of those ridiculously severe injuries, it can lower their potential ability a little bit, which is almost irrelevant because with an injury that severe, you're just not going to have the time to actually develop all the way to reach your potential ability anyways, because that's hard to do in the first place. But we have confirmed it. Research. And number 10, the myth to rule all myths, the one that gave me the idea for this video, because my brother always tells me this is something that he is convinced is true. If you simulate the match, your odds of winning are either better or worse depending on the team, but he'll actually get nervous to not simulate a match if he's on a winning streak, or to not play a match if he's on a winning streak in that way, because then he'll simulate and he'll lose to a team that he should not lose to, or he'll play the match and lose to a team that if he'd simulated, he definitely would have beaten. That's the conspiracy theory, and this myth is confirmed busted, okay? It is busted. Simulating the match, just put your assistant manager in charge. You've not put a match plan in place to run during that match, which you can learn about those in the video right up there. Let me point like 3 more times so you know exactly what I'm talking about. There we go. Okay. If you're not putting the match plan in place, then you are either better or worse at managing in-game than the computer. That is the only variable that would go into it. The matches when they simulate are no different than the matches when you actually play them. When you simulate them, they're just played on extreme fast forward, crunching the numbers against each other with no need to create a 3D match engine to present what is happening based off those numbers to you. So it's a lot easier for the game to simulate, and that's how it's able to simulate so many games. There is no difference. Busted. And so are all these FM myths, tackled one way or another with research or anecdotes or jokes, which honestly you just have to laugh through the pain of Football Manager. Something that's not a myth that we recently confirmed is real and can be a real problem is one of my players went clubbing. If you want to hear that whole story, the video is right here. I'll see you on another video or stream.